Hi everyone, I'm Elad. I'm a CSS HTML architect. Besides this, I'm the founder and the leader of the CSS Master Israel community. I'm writing a lot of articles about CSS and I love to speak about CSS in every conference and in every meetup. And today we are going to talk about the responsive design best practices. I started to create responsive design website in the year of 2012 after I started to work at the Walla News company that has a really huge website of news in Israel. And like every web developer, when you want to do something new, you are searching in the web the best practices. And I search in the web the best practices for responsive design. And to tell you the truth, I didn't find anything that I liked. And because of that, I started to think maybe I need to create my own method that I can create with them a lot better practices for responsive design. And let's start to talk about this. The first important thing, even before you're writing a single line of a CSS responsive code on your CSS, is that you need to think about how you want to organize your CSS project. And I see that a lot of web developers are creating the big CSS scene. What is the big CSS scene, you may ask? The big CSS scene that is you don't care about the CSS and you're starting to write it and you don't try to organize it, and it in a very short time the CSS becoming to be like a CSS spaghetti code. It can happen in every programming language. If you don't organize your code properly, the code becoming to be spaghetti code. But in CSS, it can get the worst from all the programming languages. It's like a really huge file of a cascading style sheet of CSS that you throwing there in the selector and you don't care about the order and you cannot understand anything what you are seeing right now. And when you want to edit some new style, where you put it because you cannot understand anything in the bottom of this huge cascading style sheet of file. Yes. And after 2 or 3 years, you understand that to maintain this code, it's really mission impossible, and you understand that you need to maybe to try to do all the CSS again, because to work with this CSS, it's really impossible. Okay then, what is a better way to organize our CSS? I think still in 2020, one of the best way to organize CSS is to use one of the CSS preprocessor. I'm using in this talk the SAS preprocessor that I'm using in the last 9 or 10 years in every one of my projects. But you can use any CSS preprocessor that you want. And when we are using a CSS preprocessor, it gives us the possibility to break our CSS into component file of CSS. And yes, we want to work in CSS in component, the same way that we are working in the JavaScript language, the same way that you are working in server-side languages. And all the people that you are working with in your own company need to think in component. Even the web designer, even the project manager. If all of us are talking in the same language of components, it's a lot easier for us to understand each other, and in this way we can create a lot better project. And after we separated our CSS to component files, every file is a lot more easier to read and to understand. Here you can see an example of one of my components that I wrote, I think 3 years ago, the breadcrumbs component. And if you remove the comments from the beginning, this component, it's only 15 lines of code. And yes, I'm from those web developers that writing properties in one line. I think that it's a lot more readable. And yeah, I know that when I'm saying this sentence, a lot of web developers think that I'm a little bit crazy. And maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but this isn't the point. The point is when you are looking on an old code of CSS file, and an old code of CSS, it's a CSS that you maybe written 1 week ago, 1 month, 1 year, doesn't matter. You're starting to forget the CSS that you're not looking at. And if you are writing all the properties in one line, you can see all the CSS selector in a lot easier way. And the first thing that you want to find in an old code of CSS it's all the CSS selectors. And in this way, it's very easy to see all of them. As you can see here, we have class of breadcrumbs, breadcrumb list, breadcrumb item, and in this way I can even understand the structure of the HTML that I'm not seeing right now. Think about it. I see all the classes, I can create my connection in my mind, and in this way it's more easy for me to understand an old code of the CSS. And I'm reading a CSS file like the elevator. I'm first searching the selector and then starting to read all the properties from the left side to the right side. But this isn't the most important thing to take from this specific slide. The most important thing, separated your ideas into separated component CSS file. You want to write properties in one line, go and do it. You don't want, don't do it. It isn't the most important thing in this specific talk. And now let's continue to our next thing. In the responsive design, we have two big methodologies that everyone talk about them. The desktop first methodology and the mobile first methodology. Let's talk about both of them and to try to understand why these both methodologies exist. The desktop first methodology. Why the desktop first methodologies exist? Because when we started to create website in the beginning, we didn't have smartphone devices. Yes, we didn't have. And in the beginning, we got so used to create first the website for the desktop screen. And when the first smartphone came to the world, it was look for us a little bit natural to create first the desktop website and only then to create a little bit support that it will look good on the mobile devices. And this is one of the reasons why the desktop first methodologies exist. And if you remember, the second reason, in the beginning when we started to create responsive design website, we still need to support all browsers like Internet Explorer 7 and Internet Explorer 8. Okay? And those browsers aren't support responsive design media rule. And if you want to support this old browser, one of the way to do it is first to create the website in the desktop screen. In this way, it's still working on i7 and i8. But for the mobile device, you're doing a media rules with all the overrides that change the style from a desktop device to a mobile device. And in this way, we can support both devices as well. And those are the reasons why the desktop first methodologies exist. Now let's talk about why the mobile first methodologies exist. The mobile first methodology is saying that the layout of the mobile, it's a lot more simple to create. Think about it. What we have in mobile, it's really easy to do it. Just boxes under boxes under boxes. Really easy to create a mobile layout. And because of that, if we are starting in the mobile, we can create all the complex thing only in the bigger and bigger screen, and in this way we can create a lot less overrides in CSS. And overrides in CSS are evil. And I know that everyone will teach you in the beginning that you can do overrides in CSS, but you need to understand the difference between you can do it, between it's recommend to do it. And it isn't recommend to do overrides in CSS, believe me. And I will show you a lot of CSS tricks how not to do overrides in CSS in this specific talk for responsive design. The second thing that you can earn if you are working with the mobile first methodology, and I'm not using this second method, but you can maybe load the first CSS only for the mobile devices. And only in bigger screen you can create another file that will load, for example, with a media of minimum width of 500 pixels. And if you have bigger screen, you can load maybe another CSS file with a media of minimum width, for example, 1000 pixels. And in this way, you can maybe load a little bit less CSS in the mobile devices, and maybe to create a little bit better performance in the mobile device. I'm not using this method because it's just a little bit better performance, but it's very hard to maintain loading different CSS files in this specific way for every one of the screen sizes. But this is another reason why the mobile first methodology exists. Okay, then we talk about the desktop first methodology and we talk about the mobile first methodology. Which methodology is better? Desktop first or mobile first? Let's keep this question to the end of this talk because I want to surprise you with my own answer. But let's keep wait for this specific thing. Let's talk about where to put the CSS media queries, but let me first think where you are putting the CSS media queries. You have the huge CSS file that no one can read and understand. And where are you putting the CSS media queries? In the bottom of this huge cascading style sheet file, yes? And what is the problem to put the CSS media in the bottom of this huge CSS file? We have two problems. Sometimes we need to do some maintenance, and we searching for a class name in the HTML, and we want to do it some changes in the CSS. We copy the class name and search it on the CSS file, the huge CSS file. We find it in the top, we do the adjustment in the top, but we forgetting that we have the same class name in the bottom, in the media rules, and we didn't check the responsiveness of this specific class name. And all the time that you're doing some changes when you are working with responsive design, your code is breaking and breaking again. The second thing, what if you want to do some rename of some class name in the HTML? You rename the class name in the HTML, you search the class name in the CSS, you find it in the top, you replace the class name in the top, and again you are forgetting that you had the CSS class name in the bottom of this huge CSS file, and every time that you need to do changes, it's very hard for you to maintain it, and all the time there are problems. Okay then, how can we solve this specific problem in a very easy way? Because we are working in component files, we can just put the media rules inside of every one of our components. In this way, we cannot forget that we have the media rule for this specific component because we're just seeing it. It's inside the component. We cannot forget the regular style, for example, for the mobile, and more style for the tablet and the desktop screen. The second thing that we are earning here is that we don't need to duplicate the class name inside the media rule. This way of written is possible only with CSS Preprocessor, because in regular CSS you cannot put media rule inside the component class name. But the CSS Preprocessor understands what you are trying to do, and when you will compile this SAS file into regular CSS, these both media rules will get outside of this class name to here, and this class name will automatically duplicate it to here and here. And in this way we cannot forget to update the class name, because we need to update it only in one place now. And we update it here, for example, and it will automatically duplicate to here and here when it compiled to CSS in this way. You see the class name here, and it's being the media rule got outside, and the class name is being duplicated inside these both media rules. And this is a lot easier way to work with responsive design components. Nice. But this can create us another problem. What is the problem when we're putting the media queries in all of our components? Now we have the same media rules in all of our components. Let's talk about this specific problem. Here you can see that I have two components, component A and component B. And in this both component I have the same media rules, and maybe I have these media rules in all of my components, and maybe I have 70 components. It's a lot. And in one of the morning, in my real life, yes, the web designer came to me after we started to create this project in the beginning, in the second month, and he told me, you know what, this middle media breakpoint doesn't work good for me. Can you please change it instead of a minimum width of 551 pixel, change it to 501 pixel? And now I need to go over all the 70 component files to change them from 551 pixel to 501 pixel, and all the smaller media rules, these ones, I need to change them. Instead of finishing max width of 550 pixel, I need to change it in 500 pixel. And if you're doing it by hand, find, replace 70 files, and if you're doing some mistake in one of the component, you will maybe see it only in 2 weeks, and you won't understand why this specific component is breaking, and this can create you a lot of problem and a lot of hard work to replace all those media rules. Okay then, how can we solve this specific problem? It's really easy to solve this problem because we are working with the CSS Preprocessor, and in CSS we can use CSS variable, and this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting the measure rule of the mobile with a CSS variable of break 1. The measure rule of the tablet, I'm putting it on another CSS variable with the name of break 2. The measure rule of the desktop screen, I'm putting it on another CSS variable with the name of break 3. And you may ask, if it's a kind of mobile, tablet, desktop, why I'm not calling those CSS variable mobile, tablet, and desktop? And in the beginning, they were with names of mobile, tablet, and desktop. But after I created those specific name, I started to get a lot of awkward questions. What does it mean? In one of the morning, the project manager came to me and told me, you know, in the smartphone, the websites look amazing, really amazing, amazing, amazing. But when I'm rotating my iPhone, I'm seeing the tablet mode in a rotated iPhone, in landscape iPhone. And you don't want to get this awkward question, because in responsive design you cannot guess really, and you cannot target all the different type of devices that we have in the world, because these days we have thousands of type of devices. And a good responsive website is website that fit no matter what screen size that we are using. And what if I'm resizing the window in the desktop screen to narrow? I will see the mobile device design. There isn't mobile design. There is small, medium, big design, but there isn't mobile design. It's only act like a kind of fitting, that something that fit to a mobile design. And this day you have some iPad Pro in landscape mode that have size of a laptop, and this iPad Pro can get now keyboard. What is it? What is it? This is a tablet or this is a laptop? And you have laptop that has touchscreen. What is it? This is a laptop or this is a tablet? And you don't want to try to guess all this, all of these thousands devices that we have in the world. A good responsive website is a website that can fit for all screen sizes. But why I'm calling it kind of a mobile, tablet, and desktop screen, if there aren't mobile, tablet, desktop screen in a real responsive design website? I'm using these keywords of mobile, tablet, and desktop only that you will understand me in a better way. Mobile means small screen, tablet means medium screen, and desktop means big screen. Okay, it's only that you can understand me in this specific talk. In the real life, you don't want to use these keywords because it can create you a wrong dialogue. And because of that, I use names like break 1, break 2, break 3. You can use other names, small screen, mid screen, big screen, but don't use mobile, tablet, and desktop. Believe me, it's creating you a lot of problem in your own dialogue with all the other people that you are working with in your own company. And now let's continue. After we put those measurable on those SAS variable of kind of mobile, kind of tablet, of kind of desktop, I now just need to implement them in all of our components. In this way, I have the measure rule with the hashtag character and the curly brackets, and inside of them I'm putting the SAS variable that I need to put. And in this way, if I want to update one of the measure rule, I update it from one place and it's affecting all of our component together. Nice. Now let's continue to our next thing. Open or close breakpoints. If you don't know these terms, feel okay with yourself, because I was created those specific terms. In 2015, I wrote an article, Responsive Design Best Practices for Big Projects, and it was very successful article, and a lot of web developers started to ask me questions because they was very interested to know from where I got those terms. And I explained them because I didn't find a lot of terms that I wanted to explain. I thought about to create my own terms, that in this way I can create a good dialogue between me and my reader. And if you like this term, it's good. And if you don't like them, what to do? There are now 6 years on the web and I'm not going to change them. And now let's talk about what it's opened and closed breakpoints. Open breakpoints. It's a media rule that has a start position but doesn't have an end position. For example, media rule of minimum width of 500 pixel. It has a start position, but it doesn't have an end. This measure rule will target screen of 500 pixel, 1000 pixel, 2000 pixel, and infinite up. This is an open range of an open breakpoint. Closed breakpoint is a measure rule that has a start position and has an end position. For example, a measure rule of minimum width of 500 pixel, maximum width of 1000 pixel. This targeting screen only in this specific range. For example, screen of 500 pixels, 700, 900, and 1000 pixel. Not even 1 pixel more. A closed range of a breakpoint, yes? Which is better to use in most of our cases, opened or closed breakpoints? Let's talk about why open breakpoint can be very dangerous for us. This is the example from one of the first biggest responsive design websites that I saw in the beginning, I think in 2012. The Guardian is built with the mobile first methodology, the methodology that everyone loves, or they think they love. And beside of this, it's working only with open breakpoints. Everything minimum width, minimum width, minimum width, minimum width. And what is the problem with open breakpoints? As you can see here, the basic style are in the mobile without any measure rule. Mobile first. In a bigger screen, the measure rule is overriding the small style of the mobile. And in a bigger screen, they are overriding this style and this style. And in a bigger screen, they are overriding this style, that overriding this style, that overriding this style. Okay then, what is the problem with overrides in CSS? Everyone does it, no? We have two problems with this specific method of open breakpoint and all those overrides in CSS. The first problem is that when we are debugging the biggest screen and we see all those overrides, crossline with all those overrides, it's starting to be very hard to debug your code because you cannot understand where you are getting all those styles from here and for here, but this is override and this is override as well. Why this doesn't affect and why this specific is affecting. And this is an easy example to understand because here you see only two properties and the same properties. In the real life you see a lot other properties. I only copy paste it here, example that you will understand this specific problem. But this is the more smaller problem because the bigger problem is when you want to change some style only in the mid-range screen, medium screen. For example, what if I need to put here in this mid-range screen padding of 20 pixel, but I don't want to put it here and here, only in this range. Because it's open, it will automatically affect me all the bigger screen. I'm adding here padding of 20 pixel and it affects me here and here. And it will happen you quite a lot when you're working with type of screen sizes that you will get a lot of things that you need to implement only in the narrow screen and not in the bigger screen. And if you're working in this way, every time that you change something in the narrow screen, it's affecting you on the big screen and it can break your code and your style again and again, and it can be very frustrating to work in this way. Because of that, my recommendation is to use closed ranges of closed breakpoints in the small and the narrow screens, and only in the biggest screen to use an open measure rule. Let's examine it. For example, the narrow screen, you can create a measure rule of max width of 500 pixels. This is closed. It's starting at 0 and finish in 500 pixels. Second one will be from 501 pixel until 1000 pixel. Closed range. The last one, for example, will be open. It will be with minimum width of 1001 pixel and that's it. Open. Minimum width of 1001 pixel and infinite up. But the upper doesn't affect on the mid and the small. The mid doesn't affect on the big and the small small doesn't affect on the mid and the big. In this way, we can create every style that we want to do to change some style and not affecting all the other ranges. But because of this, we need to ask ourselves another question, because sometimes we want to use the same style, for example, let's say in the mobile and the tablet, but not on the desktop. In the two narrow screen, I want to use the same style for the mobile and the tablet, but not for the desktop. What, I can't do it? What, I need to copy paste the style from the mobile and tablet? We don't want to copy paste in two measure rules the same styles. How can we solve it? In a very, very easy way. If you don't know, responsive design measure rule can get the comma character. And in this way, I can create a measure rule for two measure rules together. What does it mean? I can create a measure rule. We want mobile and tablet together, for example. No problem. Measure rule break 1 for the mobile, comma, break 2 of the tablet. In this way, these both measure rules are getting the same style. What this measure rule does for us is checking if the measure rule of break 1 is correct, and if it's correct, do me the style here, and if it's not correct, check if this measure rules is correct, and again, do me the same style. And in this way, I can use the same style for two measure rules together. But it can get even more better. In one of my real case study that I needed to create in my own company, in the desktop website, I had a component in the side. And let's call this component common box. And in big screen, it was really narrow because it was in the side of the website. Let's say, for example, 300 pixel. And the components, we call it common box. And when I'm resizing the screen for a little bit narrower, let's say the tablet screen, all the side was falling under the main. And now this common box was quite big because they are now both big. And when I'm resizing the screen even more smaller for the mobile devices, again everything is small now and the common box is again small. And the company asked me to create the same style for the mobile and the desktop, but different style for the tablet. And now it's very easy to do it because I'm working with closed ranges and the big one that is open doesn't affect it on the smaller one. And how I'm doing it? In a very easy way. A measure rule of break 1 mobile, comma break 3 desktop. These styles are affecting only on the mobile and the desktop screen. Now I need different style for the tablet, no problem. And another measure rule, break 2 tablet. The style of the tablet doesn't affect on the mobile and the desktop. The style of the mobile and the desktop doesn't affect on the tablet. Kind of encapsulation power in responsive design measure rules. Interesting. Now let's go back to the question. Which methodology is better in responsive design? We have the mobile first methodology and we have the desktop first methodology. First, let's explain exactly what these both methodologies are meaning. The mobile first methodology saying that the basic style of the mobile we are writing without any measure rules. And in a bigger and bigger screen, on those measure rules of the bigger and bigger screen, we are or adding some style or overriding some style. Desktop first methodology is saying the opposite thing. It's saying that the basic style of the desktop, we write them without any measure rules. And in narrow and narrow screen, we are or overriding CSS or adding some CSS, okay? Which methodology is better? Before I will answer you this specific question, I want to show you another case study. Here you can see the main navigation of the Walla News website. This is how it looks on the desktop screen, the big screen, and this is how it looks on the mobile tablet, the narrow screen, yes? This is on the desktop and this is on the mobile tablet. And in the beginning I built it in desktop first methodology, not because I wanted, only because I needed to support browsers like Internet Explorer 7 and Internet Explorer 8. And it's mean that the style of the desktop was looking quite good without any overrides because they are built first and without any major rules. But when I need to create the adjustment, and this is the same HTML, my friends, yes, this and this is the same HTML, yeah, I know. When I need to create the adjustment from the desktop screen to the mobile tablet screen, I created a major rule for the mobile tablet, break 1, comma break 2, and I done here tons of overrides to change this style to this style. And my code of the mobile tablet was really impossible to understand, so many overrides. And if I'm changing some style in the desktop, it's affecting me on the mobile tablet, and every time that I'm changing style here, it's breaking my code in the mobile tablet style devices. But from the beginning, I understood that even if I created mobile first methodology, it wasn't good enough too. You know why? Because in the mobile methodology, you are writing the style of the mobile without any major rules, because this is how it's designed, this methodology. And you're writing the style for the mobile without any major rules. And in a bigger screen, like the desktop screen, I need to change this style into this style. And in this way, it's meaning that now I'm doing a lot of overrides in the desktop screen. I need to change this style of the mobile that's written without any major rules to change them to this design with tons and lots of overrides. And this will be unreadable. And because I understand it from the beginning, this specific issue, I had in my mind another idea. And after 2 years, the company told me that I don't need to support anymore Internet Explorer 7 and Internet Explorer 8. And I thought to myself that I want to build this specific component again from scratch. I have in my mind an idea and I want to see how that it's working for me correctly. But before I will tell you what is exactly the solution, I want to give this solution a new name, because I understand the mobile first methodology and the desktop first methodology aren't good enough for me, and I want to create my own methodology, and I gave it a name. What is the name? Is the basic first methodology. What is the basic first methodology? Think about what is mobile first methodology if you are looking on it according to the desktop methodology. Mobile first methodology is kind of abstraction to the desktop first methodology. But sometimes the mobile first isn't enough abstracted. And because of that, I created for myself another layer that I call it the basic first layer, or more precisely basic first methodology. And how does it work? The basic first methodology is saying that only and only if you have the same style for all the screen sizes, you will write them without any major rule in here. But in this specific example, in this specific component, there isn't connection between the design. The design are so different that I don't want to create connection between those styles. And it's still the same HTML, but the style are so different that I didn't want to create any connection. And what I've done here, I didn't write any common style. I took the style of the mobile tablet design of this, the navigation looked like it's side navigation, and I put the style of the mobile tablet design in a closed major rule of break 1, comma break 2 in here. And if there aren't any style here or in the other major rules, only the style of the side navigation in the break 1, break 2 major rule, when I will resize the screen to the desktop screen and I didn't write any style in the major rule of the desktop, I won't see any style, because this style of the narrow screen are not affecting on the wide screen. And what I've done now, I took the style of the upper navigation and I just put them here in the major rule of break 3. And now think about it. Now if I'm changing the style on the desktop, they are not affecting on the mobile tablet. If I'm changing the style of the mobile tablet, they are not affecting on the desktop screen. The encapsulation power. And it's even more better if you think about it, because when you are debugging your code in the mobile tablet, I'm seeing only the style of the mobile tablet. I'm not seeing this style, because these style are not affecting in the narrow screen. And when I will debug the code in the desktop screen, I will see only this style, because these style are not affecting the desktop. And in this way, I'm not overriding any style. I don't need to override. I don't need to refrain to change styles. If I'm changing style in the mobile, it doesn't affect on the desktop. If I'm changing style on the desktop, it doesn't affect on the mobile tablet. A real huge power. You can do any changes that you want without afraid to do changes in responsive design website. And this is really a big power. And you need to remember that this thinking you need to create for every component. In most of your component, you will have common style. Yes, in most of the component, you want to write common style. In this specific component, I show you example that we don't want to create any common style. But in every component, you need to think about what is common and what it isn't. How can you know? If you think that you need to do overrides, you need to understand that you done something that isn't correct, because in this method you can do CSS without the need of override styles, and this is really important. And what are the key takeaways that I want you to take from this talk? First, you need to and you want to work with CSS component to separate your ideas into CSS components. Second thing, when you are creating the responsive design media rules, in the narrow screen work mainly with closed breakpoint, unless it's the last breakpoint that you want to use an open breakpoint. Yes, the last one will not affect the small one, and nothing is affect each other. And the third thing, think basic first. If you have common style for all the screen sizes, use them without any media rules. If you see that the style are not good for all the screen sizes, put them encapsulated in their own media rules. In this way, you can create any responsive design without the need to be afraid to do some changes and to when you are maintaining your own code in a responsive design website. And before we finish, my friends, a lot of web developer ask me to see some examples that I've done in Basic First. In my real project in my life, they are already compiled to regular CSS and sometimes won't be easy to you to understand and to see my code. And because of that, I created this free code pen that you can see the CSS before it compiled in SAS code, and all the HTML and all the SAS code, you can see it before it compiled, fully responsive design built in Basic First, and you can really understand and see how I'm working with CSS code in responsive design. You can find all this free code pen of WhatsApp Web, Twitter, and Facebook that built from scratch all the HTML, all the CSS in this code pen collection that I put it here. I will retweet this presentation in my Twitter account when we finish. And before we finish, my friends, if you want to see my article that I'm talking about Basic First, this is my article on Medium. You can follow me via Twitter. You can follow me via Medium. I'm writing a lot of articles on CSS. You can see all my other stuff in my own website. And my friends, thank you very much for listening.